Just starting recording. Hi, I'm Rebecca Jones. Welcome to the SLA Canada chat for today with Gary Price. Jane Dysart is here. She is the one responsible for putting all these chats together for SLA. And I have just put in the chat the link to Gary's Google page. Hopefully you can have that if you want to follow along. If not, that's just fine too. And first, I'm going to introduce Juanita Richardson, who was the very first president of SLA Canada last year. Bless her for taking on the big thing. Hey, Juanita.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I think it might have been Jane and Rebecca who were like, do this, and of course, I do what I'm told, so here I am. Anyway, thank you so much. I am the immediate past president now of SLA Canada. Patricia Sia from Langara College in British Columbia is our current president. Just a reminder that in addition to these chats that we have every month, very kindly coordinated by our own Jane Dysart, all of our board meetings are also open to all SLA members. So if you're interested in better understanding what's going on in SLA Canada these days, please don't hesitate to join us. I especially want to thank Dysart and Jones. They host this Zoom platform for us and are our very first sponsors for SLA Canada. So your sponsorship, of course, is always welcome. We very much appreciate your commitment to our organization. And I also want to thank Gary Price for joining us today. Gary is going to be SLA Canada, I don't know what we're calling him, guru?
No, he's our intelligence officer.
Intelligence officer, even better. Maybe intelligence guru. How's that? Anyway, thank you so much to all of you. Hope to see you all out at a board meeting or elsewhere soon. Things are always hopping around SLA Canada. I'll turn it back to Rebecca.
Thanks, Juanita. And a reminder to all of you that all of the SLA Canada chats are on the Dysart Jones website, dysartjones.com, and there's a special section for Gary Price. So there's not only all of his chats with us, but we've also set up that the web page that he always does, which is fabulous, is in Google Docs. And for some of you, particularly in the government, you cannot access this. So we have James Manasco, a very faithful SLA fellow, translates them all into a document that we can then put onto our site for you. And we are always delighted to have Gary. Gary he's a Canadian in his heart. Truly, he is. And Gary has to start off by telling us about his visit to the dentist. Gary, what happened when you went to the dentist?
Well, as Jane and Rebecca know, if I'm not talking about libraries and databases, I'm talking either about airplanes or music. So I'm sitting in the dentist chair and a song comes on. I start chatting with my dentist. Long story short, he goes, "So are you a big rock and roll guy, Gary?" And I said, "Absolutely." He goes, "Take a guess who my cousin is." I don't know, Bruce Springsteen. No, he goes, "Are you familiar with Rush?" Yeah. Not only is it the very famous band, but it's Canadian, so double, of course I am. Turns out my dentist is Geddy Lee, Gary Lee Weinrib's cousin. So I'm sitting in the chair with my mouth open, and the Mr. Thirsty in there. And he leaves, he comes back, he goes, "See, I really am." And there's a picture of Geddy and my dentist and his daughter from about 10 years ago when Geddy was here on tour here in DC. So there you go. Can I continue? I'm also originally from Chicago. And we all know what I believe is the greatest TV show of all time is Second City TV. And in that case, just like we're doing now, Gary and his Canadian friends, a gentleman by the name of Harold Ramis from Chicago teamed up with a bunch of Canadians, John Candy and Eugene Levy and all that, and started SCTV. So, by the way, of course, I have to have a personal relationship with everything. Seriously, Harold Ramis and my mom and my wife's uncle all went to the same high school in Chicago.
There we go. There we go.
I can and of course, Rebecca, I have to tell you my other thing, and we'll move away from Canada in a moment.
Well, no, this is SLA Canada.
But I am because of Rebecca and a few others, I am a huge Kim's Convenience fan.
Oh,
huge. Huge.
Oh, I just
So,
got into season 5 last night.
well, season five, again, Gary geekiness. Season five isn't on Netflix here in the States yet, but because of, we can talk about this another time, I have a VPN. I'm able to have a CBC Gem account. So I am starting to watch season five myself. But it is a wonderful, wonderful show. I'm also a huge Mr. D fan. So
Okay, is everybody still here? At
you're still
least
here?
Rachel, I can see
Okay.
Rachel is smiling. Of course, Kim is nodding avidly. Yep,
I am a
exactly.
Kimbit.
Thank you, Rachel. That's right. Exactly. So take it away, Gary. And don't forget the one thing I'm going to ask you about.
Sure. Whenever you want to ask, jump in. And
Should we
Rebecca,
start off with it?
sure. And by the way,
Okay.
please ask questions. These are,
Yes.
I can talk, as our hosts know, ad nauseam for hours and on. But I would much prefer answering questions. So I'm assuming, Becky, you'll moderate the questions. Just jump in at any time.
Yes. And we do ask people, like, please, if you don't know what a VPN is or you want to get a VPN, I mean, ask, because otherwise these things are god awful boring. Not that Gary is ever boring. But I did ask Gary, and he didn't want to, but he is placating me. I wanted to know, most of you have heard that Facebook stopped Australian news. Everybody hear this? And there was actually yes. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Juanita. So Facebook stopped having Australian news. And there were a couple of opinion pieces in Canadian news saying, Canadians need to pay attention to this. And I really didn't understand what was happening with that. It lasted for 5 days and then, right, was restored. And I really wanted Gary to help me anyway, and maybe that helps you understand what the hell was going on with that and if, how that could happen to any other country, including ourselves.
I encourage you to listen. It was the topic yesterday of this program from WBUR in Boston. The link should be there, but if it's not, I'll put it in. No, but I'll put the link. But basically, there is a law. The original idea was that Facebook, the publishers in Australia, are creating a law that will force platforms like Facebook and Google to pay them for the news content posted on their site. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because Facebook and Google, the two big ones, and there are many others, but they're leveraging other people's content that is written by the writers at the Associated Press, at the Globe and Mail, at the New York Times, and they're making money from it. And we're seeing this around the world. So, and specifically on Australia, Facebook played hardball. It turns out, long story short, that now the two parties are talking to each other and they're going to work something out. It looks like this was as of yesterday. The law is one step forward on being passed, but they're going to be working things out. One of the things that you'll also learn is that who is the largest news content provider in Australia and many other parts of the world? That is Rupert Murdoch in News Corp.
Oh.
So he's involved in this. So really what we're getting at is the power of Facebook to say, we're just going to cut all of the links. So if anybody shares a link to any news source, and they were very liberal, they were taking down all sorts of different things that you wouldn't think are news coming from a news organization. They were taking press releases down because it's news from the government. It didn't last too long, but that's what can happen. And I think, a lot of people will call Facebook a monopoly, Google a monopoly. I think one of the biggest challenges, well, there's a lot of different challenges, but it just shows you how dependent the world is on these platforms. And I think that's really, really troubling. There are other ways to get to news, but when you've got in the case of Facebook, over 1 billion users, you can go out and play hardball to get the results that you might want. And that is also very troubling. Um, so that's what happened. I wouldn't doubt that it happens in other places. Now,
Right.
here in the States, I believe last week or the week before, Google was proactive in working with is proactive in working with publishers. And I remember a week or two ago, they signed a deal with News Corp. But in the specific case, what you ask about in Australia, Facebook played hardball, and for a short period of time, it turns out, you were not able to access most third-party news on Facebook if you were coming in from Australia.
Interesting.
So
I ask Gary about these things because Gary doesn't just understand the web, he understands media. And although I always put that in the blurb about these chats, I think that we as information professionals really need to pay attention to how information and news is created, how
right.
publications are created, and the media flows. And I don't have time, I don't understand, so I ask Gary.
I've always been fascinated with how media flows, how it might start off with a small press release that might be in these days on a specific organization's website or flows through a service like PR Newswire or one of the many others. Then it might be picked up by a reporter and modified. But what I see a lot is people taking press releases, slapping their name on them, and counting them. On my sites, I always tell you where it's coming from. That's part of the librarian way. And I also think too that in some cases press releases for researchers like us get a bad rap, because what I find often in press releases are phone numbers, websites, contact names, so valuable that never make it in that final article. So I don't, and of course too, I think it's important to not only to understand how news flows, but the business of news, and the business of, information. I think that's really part, there needs to be more attention, because I think that just makes you a better librarian overall, to understand how this all comes together. It's like, in my case, I never wanted to be a cataloger, or these days a metadata provider, but perhaps my favorite class in library school was the cataloging class, because if you understand how it gets in the database, it's easier to get it out. So that's my philosophy from about 20 years ago. But I still think it holds true today. And it's even more of a challenge today because, of course, this also goes back to Google as well. I think Google, a lot of times, Facebook gets the bum rap, but Google is part of this as well, a huge part of this. And they're doing the same things with Google News and others. They're taking other people's contact. And again, when I was listening to this program on WBUR, I was thinking to myself, one of the reasons that the two companies that was focusing on, Google and Facebook, are, for lack of a better word, monopolies, is because the media itself played into them when they were first getting started. There were, at one point, some of us will remember other web search tools. Now Google bought them up, or nobody used them. I worked for one for a while, Ask.com, which technically is still around. And a lot of the things you see on Google were actually developed at Ask.com, really, truly. But nobody pays it. The same media that was so concerned with the consolidation, which is another issue, the consolidation of ownership of media. I mean, look in Canada, Bell Media, in terms of your electronic media, owns so much of it. By the way, they just canceled my favorite podcast, the Jay and Dan podcast, but a whole nother story. But that's really troubling. So we're talking now 2000, 2005, and even before that, the media itself was so worried that there's going to be fewer owners of media, less chance to get the word out, so to speak. But they were okay with Google, and they didn't want to talk about any other search tools. So here I am working for Ask.com, and I'm saying, by the way, well, first of all, will you talk to me? Yes. Well, this is all great, but I just use Google. Well, that mindset that Google was, and we all know what I'm talking about, I think back in 1998, 2000, 2005, nobody, Google became almost a religion for a lot of people, and it still is. But that also was the cause why there are so few voices out there to get this information, to get these aggregations. There are other web search tools out there right now, but I don't know too many people who use them. And
Yeah.
that's challenging. So it's important to remember, one of the things I've learned in my time is often the best technology doesn't win. It's more about marketing and getting the work out and PR. And I think this is something that Becky and I talk about a lot. This also applies directly to libraries and librarians. We do a very poor job of promoting what we do and how we do it. I would say it's probably at the top of my list of frustrations after this many years of being a librarian. And even more so these days, libraries offer all these great services. And when I look at the news media, the mainstream press, if you like, I see a lot of things these days, especially during the pandemic, come and use library resources, but they almost entirely focus on ebooks or audiobooks. They don't talk about often any of the other databases that the library offers. And that's troubling as well. And of course, if budgets become what they are, I see a lot of these library resources beyond ebooks going away because you can't use what you don't know about. That's another saying that I've been using for 20 years, and I think it's more true now than ever before. If nobody uses it, how hard is it going to be for the library to cut that? Because even if they do cut it, nobody's paying attention to it in the first place.
So Gary, what should we know about?
Okay, so here's the
Can I just before he gets to that, Rebecca, I'm going to interrupt him for 1 second to say that SLACanada is now working on a workshop for June that's around value and making sure people know what it is that you're doing and how you get your voice heard, et cetera. So thank you, Gary, for mentioning that.
And we'll skip all this other stuff. These are the sites I put together. I will actually not do that. I want to mention this. So in the case of doing InfoDocket and now the Association of Research Libraries Day in Review, I'm coming across all sorts of new full text open web reports. And I used to put these on InfoDocket and it was a mess. I'm famous for creating info messes. So I've really taken a step back, cut down the number of reports, but put them all in an organized by category in one place. And what I'm planning to do beginning next month is to start adding, to use a term you guys know well, I'm going to start to include more Canadian content on here. Material. So as you can see, it's not only, there's government things from the US government, but also international materials. And I would be happy to email me with suggestions of things I should be adding. But all of these are full text, what I would call reference-rich reports that with one, maybe two, but for the most part, one click, you will go directly to it. So it's kind of a, if you like, virtual new bookshelf. This material, in my mind, is stuff that those of us who've been doing this for a while dreamt of being able to get access to in a timely manner. So now Gary, these reports are up here often. What I select is up within hours of it being published. I also take the extra step that anytime I put a link on here to a report, so for example, the top global innovators report, which came out yesterday, I will then take the URL, put it into Wayback Machine, and make sure that it's archived right when it's discovered. And we've talked about that in the past, but that link rot is the term of art for problems with URLs, that one day they're available, the next day they're gone. So one thing that I've talked about in other presentations with you guys, and I'm going to say again, archive what you see, not only for yourself, but be a good member of the community and make sure a copy of it exists in some, whether it be the Wayback Machine or some other public web archive, because we're really, over time, a lot of material is going to be lost or very difficult to find, which for most people, not us, but for most people means lost and undiscoverable. So that's the new thing. And there's a report roundup.
Wait, so it's actually on info. Oh, there it is, report roundup.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So the next month,
I got it.
The next month, and beginning March 1st, I'll start a new one. I also want to point out this recent report. Just want to make sure you know about it. It came out a couple of weeks ago from Statistics Canada. All sorts of research on misinformation in Canada during the pandemic. So these are the types of things I would normally be putting on that roundup.
Now, does anybody know? So are those two people, are they librarians? Does anybody know
What two? Oh, these two people?
who have put that together?
No, I don't.
Anybody here from the federal government? Hey, Heather.
Let's see who they are. Let's see if we can find out.
I'm just wondering.
I'm going to bet that they're social science researchers or something like that. But how much time do you want me to spend looking?
No, it's okay. I just wondered if anybody knew them.
I'm going to assume that they work for Statistics Canada.
I know they work for Stats Can, but I was.
Well, what do they do there?
I
okay,
know.
Becky and I like to have this bickering. She likes to bicker with me because I'm an easy target.
It's the Bickersons. Okay, sorry, I interrupted.
I just want to say, one of the things that I talk a lot about with librarians is what Google did. And that has become a verb without spending a dime on traditional forms of advertising and marketing, AKA word of mouth, and getting not only word of mouth, but getting to the right people with a consistent and constantly updated set of facts, anything new, they were constantly reinforcing it by hand-holding and using word of mouth to power them to become the company that they are today, to become the verb. We need to do more of that. And I think even if you, for example, I mentioned earlier, all the resources that libraries offer, I would argue, and I can only speak for my family now, but I would think that if you went up to some family members, close family members, or just a friend, and you told them some of the things that are available to them through whatever public library in whatever city, and they can get to them 24/7, 365, they don't know. And at the same time, technically, or not even technically, I mean, it's their tax dollars going to fund this stuff and people don't know about it. So why my sister goes, for example, to buy an article from the New York Times or the Chicago Tribune for $4.95 when she has access to it through her public library is only because she hasn't learned that the public library has all of this stuff. So the publishers are winning both ways. They're winning, they're getting licensing fees from the library, and individuals are spending $4.95 or whatever for the article. So as I said a moment ago, people can't use what they don't know about. So the easiest way to do it, in my opinion, is word of mouth. It's easier said than done, I know, but just when you're with a family member and just say, especially even better if you have family or friends with kids, they probably don't know about a lot of this stuff. And it's been my experience that teachers in the classroom aren't aware of some of the resources that libraries provide. And once you do that, and once you've had a successful encounter like that, and say, I can also help you, as I mentioned here, even if you don't want to talk about libraries, which you should, if you just share a quick Google search tip with somebody, you're going to make a lot of friends, and they will actually see the difference in their search results. So my favorite one, I think I mentioned this last time, and I mention it quite often, is showing people how to limit Google. Whether it be words, can't judge a book by its cover, you can't judge a web page by its title, but in some cases you can. So just people showing people how to search in title or to a specific domain. When people see the difference in the results and a lot of the junk is out of there, they will come back to you for more. That's how word of mouth marketing, in my opinion, works. And I can say personally, with the ARL Day in Review, it's been very successful. ARL is very pleased with it. And all of the marketing has been by word of mouth. So.
Oh, Mr. Price, Mr.
Yes.
Price, I have a stupid question. Okay.
Right.
How do I find when a web page has been published? How do I know the year on a web page? Okay, if all of you are who on this call is rolling their eyes, but I honestly do not know. How do you do that?
How much time do you have?
Oh. Does anybody else know how to do that? I don't know.
Well, we can talk. I'm happy to. I love these questions. I love.
Is anybody else interested in that? I hate it when I find a search and I'm like, okay, is this 2014? I don't know what the hell date it is.
Okay. I love this question, and I love it even more because it's coming from you. So
And I'm supposed to know what I'm
there's
doing.
no perfect answer, but but because there's pretty much only one search engine, let's go to Google.
There you
If I
go.
said let's go to Bing, you'd freak out, and you can't do some of these.
Okay,
So anyhow,
hold your hands up. How many of you use Bing? Yeah, there you go.
I would encourage you to take a look at Bing for news searching.
Yep,
And by the way, people love DuckDuckGo
I
because
do.
of their privacy. Most of the results in DuckDuckGo are Bing results. They're just purchasing the results from Bing.
Oh,
It's a great example too of marketing. People
Okay.
won't go to Bing, but they'll go to DuckDuckGo.
okay. I do. I use Bing for news. It's great.
And images too.
Oh, okay.
So how would I find out when a page, it's involving two things. First of all, let's do a search. Site GOV, site, I'm not going to type the last name of the former person who lived here in Washington, D.C. with orange hair. He's far, far, far away. Let's just pick something here. So the first thing you can do, and let me do file type PDF actually. So now I've limited Google to US government sites, file type PDF.
Right.
One thing
It's
that
so
often gets
effective.
by a lot of people, perhaps not this audience, but for sure the end users you work with, is clicking on tools. And this is something that's different than the early days of web search. I can limit by time. So this is one of the ways I discover new things. I will do I'll take it even more. I'll do house.gov, right? File type PDF. So this is limiting to US House of Representative web pages and PDFs. So I might use this as a discovery tool, right? How can I discover whatever the domain is? It doesn't have to be house.gov or just .gov. Do it again. But this is how I discover a lot of things. And one of the things you will see here is 3 days ago. You see the timestamp? The timestamping on Google results pages is much, much better. But it is still not the end all to be all.
Okay.
Obviously, then the next way is to actually go to the page. Well, the next thing you can do is you could take a look at the cache and see how current that is. And Google has changed, as you might have noticed, the results pages recently. And now instead of seeing cache at the bottom like you used to, you will see it. Let me move this away here. You will see it by clicking on the 3 dots and then clicking cache or cached. So this is going to say well, it's not a PDF, so they don't put a cache date on there. And now, since the last time I looked, we all know that Google does stuff and then they don't tell anybody. So let's actually look at this page. Yeah, you can see it was last cached today at this hour GMT. But if you're looking for something older, well, if you're trying to find something, was it around in 2019? Was it around in 2016? Wayback Machine, which is why I'm encouraging people to archive things as they come across them.
Right.
But for
Gary?
example,
Oh.
and I'll show you something really cool. I'm glad you brought this up.
Okay.
So let's go to this House member of the House of Representatives webpage, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go here. Now we can go to Wayback Machine. I'll watch this. And I will go and I will put in the URL. I think she's a wrote. So you can see all these copies of her site have been around, the first one being in 2012. But what's really cool is a relatively new feature, it's still beta, where you can actually pick 2 different pages in the Wayback Machine and visually see them side by side to make comparisons. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's fantastic. That
that
means that if you
fantastic?
have like you're looking at a report or their guidelines, and you
Right.
can see how they've updated those guidelines.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's by clicking on changes you can pick. Now, I don't think you can do that for PDFs side by side, but there are other tools to compare the text in the PDF. But those are the ways that I would try to date something on a web page. Also, Bing has a cache. Look at this is even easier, obviously, for the newer stuff. So if it's something in the last week or two, you might want to check the Bing cache. Yandex, which is the large Russian search engine, caches pages. Baidu, which is the major search engine from China, caches pages. And by doing that, you can kind of put a timestamp on it. So those are some of the ways that I can use to help try to put a page and a date on the page. In some cases, you could also look into the source code of the page.
Okay.
And you
I've
might
tried
find
that.
a date there as well.
All right. Carolyn actually put in about is it a search engine, Carolyn? At QWant?
That's another privacy search engine.
Oh, is it? I don't
Quant,
know that
yeah.
one. Okay.
I believe Quant uses Google results. Unfortunately, one of the things I'm looking for a lot are PDFs. And no search engine does PDFs better at this point than Google. Now, to find out when something is new on the web, let's say I want to know when something is put up on the SLA website. Well, I will skip down to, first of all, just a couple of things. Maybe one of these times we're going to have a special, since I'm now on the payroll, so to speak, I will be happy to do a special edition of the, whatever we call this, chat. And we'll dive way deep into this. This is the tool that is the bread and butter of what I do. And this is called Website Watcher. It's about $80 US. This will actually allow me, so for example here, to go to hundreds of different pages. I have about 1,000 pages in here, organized into different folders. I can, at one time, click check, right? And in the case of this folder, we'll go to all 234 URLs, which are basically the news pages and more from all of the ARL member institutions, right? And then as it goes through there, if something on the page has changed since the last time I looked at it, it will pop up in red and then show me what has changed since the last time. So for example, if I'm looking to see if something is new on the SLACanada homepage, this is one of the ways I could do it. And you can set this up to run once a day, once an hour. If you've got OCD, once every 5 minutes. You can have the changes sent to you. You can either look or have the changes sent to you via email with an attachment to show you the change. But this is, over the years, and I know Becky and Jane will laugh, they're like, well, how do you know that these things are happening so quickly? This is one of the key tools because this is always running in the background. This has become, I know several news organizations who have actually bought enterprise licenses for this tool. And by the way, there are other services on the web that are cloud-based services that do this. The challenge for that is it becomes expensive because to use some of those services, you buy the URLs in buckets. So if you wanted to start monitoring 1,000 web pages every 20 minutes or even once a day, it becomes very expensive. With this tool, you can do it as many as you want. It's a big caveat too. This tool only works it's built for Windows. However, as you probably might be able to tell, I'm an Apple guy. There is a little piece of software that I use where I don't have to buy Windows that will allow me to use it on a Mac computer. You lose a bit of usability with it. One of the things that's wonderful, but you cannot do with the Mac version, as I'll call it, is that if you have the Windows version, you can actually, as you go through and you see different versions of the page, with an extra click, you can archive multiple versions of the page on your own local computer.
Gary?
Yes.
What tool are you referring to? Because we have Mac people here.
It's called Crossover. And it's from a company in Minneapolis. It's completely legitimate. And I buy a license once a year for like $30 or $40. You can also find them on sale. And that's what I'm using. Now, of course, there's another way of doing that if you're a Mac person. And if you're AWS or you have access to a cloud, you could mount Website Watcher on a cloud installation and do it that way as well. Now, the other thing that you could do, you can do with Website Watcher is that Website Watcher will also accept RSS feeds. So if the site has an RSS feed that works, one of the things I've noticed over the last few years is a lot of RSS feeds that once worked don't work anymore. So you can put RSS feeds in here as well. And by the way, you can even say, only tell me if a page on the National Library and Archives Canada has changed, and if the word baseball is found on that particular page, not in the page, but on the page. So
Gary,
that's another way of limiting how many you get back.
Okay, Gary,
Yes.
What is your opinion of Feedly?
Feedly is an RSS aggregator. It's a good one. It allows full text searching. It's not the one that I use.
What do you use?
Which one do I use? I use one called InnoReader.
Oh.
INO Reader. And what I like about it is it offers full text feeds. It also allows you to do all sorts of different alerts. Again, most of this, they have a limited, it's a freemium model. You get a little bit for free, but you get most of it depending on how much you want to pay, and how much you need. But you can even, with InnoReader, you can say, if this RSS feed is changed and the word Toronto is on it, send it directly to my email. So there's all sorts of alert features available as well. Now, the one issue, and it also does a very good job, as Feedly does, I should say, in helping you discover feeds. However, as I mentioned a moment ago, often feeds don't work.
Oh.
So,
what's the old reader besides me?
The old reader is another
Carolyn
RSS
uses
aggregator.
the old reader.
Everybody's got their favorite RSS aggregator, and it is not for me to say which one is best. It's the one that works best for you.
Okay.
As I said, I'm an InnoReader guy, but I have other, there's another one that I actually use sometimes too. I'll give you another one called NewsBlur, NEWSBLUR. That's my secondary one. But what happens if the site doesn't have an RSS feed or the RSS feed doesn't work? There are, again, services that do this. This is the one that I use. It works really well. It's fee-based, not very expensive. But RSS.app will basically allow you to take any web page and it will look at the coding of the page and do its best, it's not perfect, to create an RSS feed for you that you could drop into an RSS aggregator. So there you go. So for example, if SLACanada doesn't have an actual RSS feed, you could take this, go to the actual web page, drop in the URL, and it should create a feed. Especially if the page somewhere on it says, news or something like that. So that's something you might want to take a look at. Of course, all this might be too much for most people. In other words, there's 2 or 3 feeds I'm interested in, or I want to help my colleagues set up. For example, maybe they have a favorite trade publication. Maybe or maybe there's an organization they want to monitor. Well, and I'm not going to spend the time, and they're not interested in me spending the time to, start going over which RSS feed is best for them. One thing that, in my opinion, works the best, I always say this, sorry, Mom, but it's mom-proof, is email. The way everybody, even my mom, and that's she can open her email, and it's easy, and it doesn't go away like a tweet goes away in 10 seconds, right? So with a service called, and there are others, of course, no matter what I'm talking about today, there's something else that does it. This is a service, again, free for a little bit, fee-based for a lot. It's been around a lot of years. I've talked about it in the past, but this is called IFTTT, if this, then that. And it allows you to take disparate web services and mash them together. For those of you who really want power and a lot more tools to mash together, another service that's a lot more difficult to use is called Zapier, Zapier. See, I talk the real Canadian talk.
I was going to say, we'll forgive you. It's okay.
So so what I'm suggesting here, you can try it yourself. find an RSS feed, go to rss.app, create a feed, go to Ifttt, and you can hook up an RSS feed directly to an email account or to a Gmail account. So you can say, every time there's a new headline on this RSS feed, don't worry about aggregators, because the people in my office could care less about them. And just every time there's a new article on that specific feed, have it sent to my colleague via email. They'll get it, and then they have it. And you've provided them with a service to keep them informed on whatever they're interested in. So RSS, as we all know, has been around for a long, long time. But I think with so many different sources and trying to keep in a world where curation is a huge opportunity for librarians, RSS, whether it's with a native RSS feed or a service like RSS app, has a lot of possibilities to make our lives and to make dissemination of information a lot easier.
Right. Public librarians could do that for their counselors, right?
Absolutely.
Could do that for the CAO.
It's keeping yourself in front of them as well and providing a service of value and it's one thing to provide a service of value, but the most important thing, or one of the most important things, is showing your value. And by doing something as simple as creating an RSS feed to their email, shows them that you're out there, that you're current, and you're providing them with something they probably couldn't do themselves.
Hey, Gary.
Yes.
You know, on the page that you're showing, see in the left-hand side, that little gray ticker tape? What is that? That update?
Oh, that's Website Watcher. It tells me.
Oh, it's running.
It's running. So I went through it can go through all those 234 in the ARL member pages.
Yep.
You can go through all those with a broadband connection in about 2 minutes. And now, when I click on something, it should show me what has changed since the last time I looked at it. You can actually just go here. Sometimes it triggers incorrectly. You need to go back and work on those. So here, you can say highlight keywords on the page to get to those quickly. But this is really a powerful, powerful tool. And it works. So again, I ran this early this morning. This was not this. I'm now looking at the University of Arizona's web news page. This was put up there today. That's how. And it doesn't work 100% perfect all the time, but the value completely outweighs anything. And you can constantly be tweaking this to avoid, like if there's a date on the page, you can say just disregard all dates, that kind of thing.
Great.
Well, we're going to have to save some of these for our next. This is from, these are just some of my favorite open web tools. So I'm just going to pick 2 or 3 of them, because I could go on for hours. One, if you're just looking for eye candy, or to show, for those of you who do training, and I'm sure in some of your training, there is a section on all the Wikimedia projects, for better or for worse. I've kind of changed my tune on Wikimedia and Wikipedia, but
Why?
this also.
What do you mean you changed your tune?
I'm a lot more okay with it than I used to be.
Oh, all right.
That doesn't say a lot, but we're going to let this fire up. It sometimes takes a moment, but this will allow the user to see every change going on any Wikipedia in real time. And because I'm trying to show it to you, it's not working. You can even say, show me only changes that are happening via registered members, only show me changes happening by bots. I'm actually going to open this up in another window just because. And let this fire
show
up.
of hands. Did anybody else know that this thing existed? Put your hand up if you knew. I did not know.
Let's continue while this is firing up and I'm trying to show it to you and it's not. Oh, and by the way, when it does work for you, I'm sure some of you are getting it to work. You can click on it and then you can actually go and see whatever the change was in that particular Wikipedia entry. So it's great eye candy. It's a great learning tool.
Right.
Let me go back here.
But also some of these people work for organizations that have Wikipedia entries.
Right.
So to be able to see if somebody's doing something.
In addition to Wikipedia, Wikimedia Foundation has a lot of other projects. And one project I adore is called Wikidata.
Oh, Kim Silk.
Working for a lot of us who don't code, sometimes getting the actual data or even finding out what they have can be challenging. This is called Reasonator, and this does a gorgeous job, an easy job of letting you find out what's available from Wikipedia or from Wikimedia. So it's that. It's also a great ready reference tool because everything that is in here has a link to the original source. So I'll just pick, who should I pick? Let's pick the Hubble Space Telescope. And it should it should come up. There we go. So now in one place, I basically have a ready reference shelf of information about the Hubble Space Telescope. You know, everything from the length to the installed capacity to all this type of material. It gives you direct links to the Wikipedia entries. But what I love, and I think any librarian will love, and if you're a metadata librarian, what you'll really love is that, let me move this over here. It gives you direct links to the Hubble Space Telescope or whatever the search is, directly to each one of these sources where they're pulling data from. So everything from the Twitter username to the WorldCat identity to the virtual international authority file, all of that is in one place for you. And there you go.
Wow.
So it's a great tool if you don't know whatever you're trying to research. I mean, let's see, and it'll give you, it also does disambiguation. So if I do Pearson Airport, let's see if any, that should come right up. But let's see. Yeah. So do I want Pearson International Airport or Terminal 1 station?
I'll go to Terminal 1.
But you can just see what it has on something like the airport. So this is an aggregation of aggregation. Remember the days we used to go to airports, Becky and Jane?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
So in one place, you're getting all of this information for ready reference. Now, obviously, this is not going to be ready reference for those on the call, but everything from the runway lengths, geeks like me, to, but again, what really is the best thing about this, in my opinion, is that it gives you direct links to all these underlying resources in one place.
Fantastic.
And that's called Reasonator from Wikidata.
Fantastic.
Do
you know what I want you to do the next time? I want you to do a session on, do you remember when I had you talk to Owen Sound Public Library and you showed them sites that they could use with kids in terms of, you know, airplanes, and it was just fascinating, like for STEAM projects. I realize this is special libraries, but I thought it was so interesting.
I want to make sure, again, I think we've talked about this in the past, but you'll see all these 3 links here, 4 links. Again, for background information, but also for going out. You know, a lot of people will say they use Wikipedia if they don't know about something to get some basic links. I would encourage you to take a look at these reports as well from these 4 legislative research organizations. Here in the States, the CRS, the European Parliament, House of Commons. These are incredibly well-researched reports. I'll just give you an idea. It used to be until into the last couple of years that trying to get CRS reports was challenging. Now they're put up this, and they're updated. You know, this organization used to be led by our friend Donna Sheeter. This is high quality research. But what's great about it is not only the research. So for example, here is a brief report about what happened 5 miles from where I'm sitting a few weeks ago, but it talks about facial recognition technology. As you can see, all of these blue are hyperlinked to quality sources on whatever the topic might be. So this is a relatively brief report, but you can see the quality of what's here. So again, of course, tell Donna that link isn't working. But you get the idea here. So this is high quality research from world-renowned research organizations that's made available for free. I get an email every morning from the UK House of Commons Library listing all of their new reports, and they all focus, they all include reports on international topics, but also it's interesting to get the perspective on a topic from outside of whatever that country might be. Can we do one more? How long are we going till?
Oh, we just go till 5:15, so you've got like
Okay.
8 minutes.
Okay. Privacy.
And make sure you put if you have a burning question, please put it in the chat.
This one is for you guys searching your American friends or people what you want to search in the United States. Some of you know, I speak a lot on privacy. I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to show you a research tool, which, like it or not, exists. In my opinion, this is the best set of search tools to find things about the United States, from zip codes, maps, all of that. But what I want to specifically show you is this thing called Personator. I have found people, and this is free. You get a few for free, then you can register for an account, and this is, you get up to 1,000 searches a month for free. So I'm just going to show you me. So I won't.
Is there anything like this for Canada?
No, because privacy is a whole different ball game in Canada. And now the U.S. is starting to realize that. So I can search for Gary Price in Maryland. Let's find me. In some cases, let me move this away. You get the person's age. So here's Gary D. Price, 416 Franklin. You see my elder age there. A lot of the American phone directories, even something as simple as whitepages.com will include age. In that case, by the way, it's correct. So if I click on my address here, you get all sorts of different things. You find out when I bought my house. That is correct.
God.
Yeah, I know. You find out my phone number. That is correct.
Holy shit.
My home phone number. You find out who we're very proud to have as our representative, Jamie Raskin, who was the head of the impeachment. You find out where my post office is, but look at this. It's actually then tied to Google Maps, one click, and I'm looking at the front of my house. So it's all in one place.
Okay, that's pretty freaky.
Then you can actually go even further. I can go into show details about the property. You can find out who the second owner of the house is, my wife, with the correct middle initial. You see what the market value is to live just inside of the Beltway. You find out all sorts of things about the actual property. So there's all sorts of US directories out there for people search, but I have found this one to be one of the best ones out there, and it's free for up to 1,000 searches a month.
Good Lord.
It's scary.
That is scary. Okay.
I think I might have mentioned this in the past, but I'll mention it again. I checked a while back, and I don't know if the Canadian version of this is still working, and because I'm trying to show it to you, I'll tell you something. As I mentioned earlier, I talk a lot about privacy, and trying to be somewhat of a privacy zealot sucks because a lot of times sites don't work correctly. But we'll save that aggravation for another call. I sound like Jeremy Hotz, don't I? Anyhow, this was really useful, especially here in the States with the previous administration. This is a site that's been around for years. It's gone through, for a while it was taken down several years ago, but now it's part of ProPublica. This allows you to search for deleted tweets by politicians. Now, there used to be a Pilot Whoops for Canada. I don't know if it's still active. So anytime a politician, a governor, a member of US Congress tweets something, and then they say, for whatever reason, I don't want this out there, or sometimes they do it, it's an honest mistake. It was tweeted too early, or they've got the wrong address. But we all know that sometimes politicians say things that they regret. This will automatically resurrect the tweets and make it available in this searchable database. And then Google comes along and reindexes Pilot Whoops. So it brings up the discussion of what deleted actually means in the internet age, at least for politicians.
So this is like the Wayback Wayback
It is
Machine
like
for
the
deleted
Wayback
tweets.
Machine, but only for one particular thing. That being tweets by politicians in the states. And I will take a more, if anybody knows if the Pilot Whoops for Canada is still active, then I'll let Becky know and I will add it.
Great,
That's
great.
that.
The other thing, next time we talk with you, and when do we talk with him again? In 6 months, 4 months, something like that. It's like the dentist, right? It's the Mr. D dentist. I would really like you to talk about doing prospect research in Canada, and
Okay.
and what I know many of you do prospect research, but I'm betting this man will know some things that we haven't thought about, and how to get at it. Is that of interest to people?
I'll leave you with this one. And by the way, if there are any questions, we can do that as well. Again, as I've now said many times, there are many ways to get to the same place on the internet. And this is just one service. This one is free. So if you log, I'm not going to take the time to do it. You all know what it looks like to log into a Google account. Excuse me, to a Twitter account.
Is this really a Tweet Beaver?
Tweet Beaver.
Is it Canadian?
It's no, I don't think no. But and that's I've used this before. This is just a bunch of different tools in one place to allow a non-coder like me to take advantage of the Twitter API. So, for example, if I wanted to download a user's complete timeline, I think you're limited to like 25 or 3,500 tweets. With one click, I can log into whatever Twitter account I want. Say, I want every Dysart Jones, the last 25 or 3,000 tweets from Dysart Jones, and I'll get it in a nice PDF format.
Get out of town.
Right. You can search, you can do all variations on that thing.
Download a user's friend list?
You can find out Jane is friends with this person, Becky is friends with this person. Who are their two friends? Who are the people that they follow in common? So you can see you can do all these different things with TweetBeaver and not have to use the API. You don't have to be a coder.
Holy crapioli.
So
has anybody ever used this?
Again, you don't have to use TweetBeaver. This is just one aggregation of these types of tools. There are other services out there that will sell you like somebody's complete timeline, but this one allows you to do it for free. You can actually download a user's, every one of their followers you can download. I think you can actually download these in a CSV or Excel file as well. So now you have them in one place.
Oh, that's just creepy.
So that's the benefit of, that's the beauty of the internet. It's just creepy.
It's just creepy. Tweet Beaver. Tweet Beaver.
Right.
Tweet Beaver. Okay. So Gary, now I have to say thank you to, there's Jim says allmytweets.net.
There you go.
Okay, I could do that to all my lovin', but I won't. Juanita has been chatting to, please make sure when you renew your SLA membership that you want to belong to the Canadian chapter. We'll split off soon. No, I didn't say that. And James also reminding people that we are actually talking to Internet Archive Canada. Who knew? Next week, March 4th. It's actually a real conversation that Jane and I are going to have, but we're going to be broadcasting it. So you're welcome to find out what on earth, there's an office here. What are they doing? Like, who uses it? It's actually through University of Toronto.
Right.
Is that right, Jane? Yeah. Oh, of course, Gary knows, of course. And we will, and a reminder that this, of course, is going to be on the Dysart Jones website. I'll put the video up later tonight and the podcast, because Gary is great to listen to. Tell you, it's great podcast. And what else did I want to remind people of? I think that's probably it. We are just delighted that you're here. We always have more hits afterwards. And I'll get this translated into documents that those of you in the government can use. And Gary, thank you so much. So next time it's going to be about public research for prospect researchers. And it's also going to be, he does this great thing on various free websites you can use for stuff for your kids, or if you're in a public library, how you can, do pretty easy STEAM activities with them. So terrific. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye, Gary.
Bye.
Take care.